Good morning. It's good to see you.
Good
So,
morning.
We are
yeah,
live.
we're live. Oh, good. I was worried about our not being live. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. We are meeting remotely today because it's Monday, and we have our general counsel here. We have Senator Weeks only for an hour, so we are going to work reviewing our housing bill, H775. We've taken out a lot of pieces. We're in the last stretch here. So anything that requires time and really deep thought, we are sadly in a position, given the Senate's constraints, we are sadly in a position of having to probably punt it to next year or punt it to conference committee, one or the other. So, Cameron, you did I failed to send the summary late last night. Oh my gosh, I totally apologize for that. So, Cameron, would you be kind enough to go through the summary of H775 with us, high level, what we've agreed to, what we've taken out, and where we are?
Yes, ma'am. I would be happy to.
Oh, I can't believe I did that.
I
Okay.
can so I'm going to share my screen with the bill and we'll just quickly walk through the sections themselves. There's a few other very minor language additions, primarily from our editing team. And so those are highlighted, but this version of 775, which should be draft 3.1. Kara, just sent me a request to share.
Yep.
Okay, your amendment to 775, strike all, draft 3.1. Quickly, I'll walk through the sections. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you're not going to start with the summary?
I was just going to walk through the sections and mention the summary. Yeah,
Great.
because I can kind of speak to the super high level as we go through. So Section 1 is the Service Supported Housing Advisory Council. This is the language that was included in S328 as you all passed that bill out of committee earlier this year. This is the continuation of the work that was done from last summer. So there's no changes to the language in this section. There were some minor additions from the House that we reviewed on draft 2.1 to this section that was proposed by the advocacy organization. But other than that, that section hasn't changed.
Great.
Then we get to section 2, the state treasurer's credit facility. This is the increase from.
And just as we go through, let's just double check. I think we're all fine. I think we're pretty much all fine with the whole bill, but from where I remember things. But let's just make sure we are all okay with each section. We're fine with that section. Don't stop sharing. Let's keep moving. But I think we're all fine with that section. Yes.
As far as I know, I'll reread it one more time, but yes, I think so from my perspective.
Right. Okay, Cam, let's keep moving.
Okay, section 2, we have the treasurer's credit facility. This is the increase from 10 to 12.5%. This does not include the 1% that was on the that was in the House proposal, and it does not include the offsite pilot program that was in the House proposal. So this section 2 is the version that you all passed in 328 that is just the increase to 12.5%.
Let me ask you a question at this point. Do any of you remember testimony from the treasurer as to whether or not the Capital Debt Affordability Committee was consulted in this or was involved at all? Any recollection of that?
I don't, but I think it's the LIAC. I think they're fine with this. I think the treasurer confirmed that, but I think we can double check that.
I think it's good. I think it'd be good just to double check it because that's an important piece in terms of the ability of the state to incur debt.
But it's not incurring.
This would not be incurring additional debt.
This is not incurring any more
it's not
debt. Thank
incurring.
you, Thomas.
I realize that.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm okay with this at the moment, but it's not incurring more debt. It's using what we have currently. It's using the cash. Right. Okay, section 3.
Okay, so section 3 is going to be the changes for the Vermont Economic Development Authority. And if you all recall, this is the change to the definition of eligible facility, which will authorize, beginning here on page 6, with deference to VHFA, there has to be joint financing with a financing lender, and it authorizes VITA to fund multi-unit housing developments of 5 or more units, with the exception that VITA cannot fund housing where VHFA has determined that it's being primarily developed for families of low or moderate income, or it's utilizing funding by VHFA. This is just a slight tweak of the language as you initially passed it and as it was in 775 as it came over from the House, to make sure that this intention in the sub 1 and 2 was being explicitly clear, and to allow VITA to fund portions or phases of a multi-unit housing development. So the words portions or phases was added in. So some minor tweaks to clean up the section, but ultimately VITA and VHFA have both signed off on this version of the language.
Perfect. This is great. And it adds another lender to housing projects and sort of strengthens all housing, all income levels. I think this is a great addition. Everybody okay with that?
Fine with that.
Yep. Right.
Okay, so moving to the next section 4, this is VHFA. This was a request that came in for 775. So this was not included in 328 because the request came in after you all had passed that. And if you remember, this is directly from VHFA regarding the rental housing revolving loan program. And so my recommendation to you all at this point was to put this into statute because it's in session law. So that's what section 4 is doing, is articulating that that's what we're doing. And then section 5 is just including the current program as it exists into statute, with the change that currently the program is designed to serve individuals who are, I think it's between 65 and up to 150% of applicable area median income. So this change is removing that floor, and it allows anyone earning up to 150% of applicable area median income. So it's opening up this revolving fund to be able to serve the development of rental housing that could serve even, lower income households. So that is the primary change.
I support this. I think we all supported it when Maura was in. Is that generally okay? We can check that.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
There was one change here. These are from our editing team, just wanting to clarify the language. So I've added the word criteria so that program has to include the following criteria. And then we added a conjunction down here, and the program shall include streamlined application process, an outreach plan, and an equitable system for distributing investments. So there was just some minor technical cleanup that we did that I just wanted to point out. Nothing of substance there, but from the previous version. So
right.
Okay. Next on the bottom.
Cleanup.
Yep, the bottom of page 11, we're looking at the VHIP program. These changes were in 775 as it came over. So this would authorize the department to advance funding at the beginning of the project, as opposed to it being a strictly reimbursement program, which is how it is now. And then you have the addition here for the annual report that you all added last year, making sure that that report is submitted by November 15th. That's the only changes.
One of the issues that I could see surfacing is the reason for the advancement and what guarantees or security, additional security, if any, may be needed. Because if the money is gone and is advanced beforehand, what risks are we developing? Do you recall that discussion?
You mean how they would claw it back? No, I don't, but I don't recall.
I think it would be one of the issues that would be likely raised as a question on the floor is, are we
let's find out the answer to that. But I'm pretty sure they would have a mechanism.
I'm pretty sure they do, but I don't remember what it is if it was discussed.
Right. So Senator Brock, I think it's a great question. When this came up in the House, I mentioned to the House General Committee that there's really nothing that prohibits the department from doing this already. And the department came back and said they, would not be comfortable doing this unless there was explicit statutory authority authorizing them. So that's what this language is intended to do. But to your point, I think it's a great one, which is, what are the securities that you as a department would put in place if you were going to upfront the money to ensure.
If the recipient goes bankrupt in the meantime, who's responsible? How do you get the money back?
Right.
And that's a real risk, I think.
I think it's a good question, and we will I'll email Sean after this meeting, but I'm pretty sure they've addressed that, but we will clarify that.
What's that paragraph number again?
It's section 6.
Yep. Page 12, subdivision 2. It'd be A2, subdivision A2.
A2. Risk of advancing.
To the next section, section 7. This is on page 13. This is about special assessment bonds. If you all recall, this is authorizing the municipality when they create the special assessment to be able to issue revenue bonds. This is the language that John has walked through with you all. This has not changed as it came over from the House, but what you all are proposing to add in is this section 7A. And then this section 7B, which is to address the issue that Michael Gaughan came in and raised, John worked out. So no changes to those sections, but they're included there.
Great. Good.
Would you like me to move on to the next section, Madam Chair?
I just want to remind you that this meant that we could take advantage of creating a special assessment district in addition to it could be sequential, so that we could create a special assessment district, let's say for the water, and then you could do CHIP for the sewer, and then you could do other funding mechanisms. But the way it was drafted, you couldn't do the other programs. So this language enables it to municipalities to take advantage of all the programs available to them.
Right.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I hope everybody else is as well.
As far as I know.
Okay. Moving to the next section, section 8, regarding municipal plans. Moving to the top of page 16, if you all recall, this is about the change to the housing element of a municipal plan for the housing element to include an analysis of regulatory and physical constraints preventing the development of sufficient housing to meet their housing targets, and then the requirement to include progress towards the construction to meet those housing targets. This is the version of that language that you all included in S328. The House passed a similar concept, but with different language. It was a lot lengthier and had more information and required information to go back to DHCD if the municipality couldn't meet the housing targets. So your language here, simplified, more succinct, and this is what was approved, I believe, at the end before you passed out 328. What was agreed to by the BLCT and the regional planners, et cetera. So this is your version of this language.
Right. Great. Thank you. I'm just texting Sean to ask the question Randy asked about VHIP.
Yep. Okay. So moving to the next section, section 9. Now we're starting to stray into areas that are another attorney portfolio. So I'm going to do my best to make sure I'm clarifying what you're doing, or at least remind you what you've done. This is all the stuff that was in S328. So you have this amendment to the definition of served by municipal sewer and water infrastructure, where you removed the reference to state regulations or permits here. This was an amendment that you all did on the floor. This wasn't in the bill as it came out of committee, if you remember. The next change on page 19 is the similar change to what you have in S757 that you just passed last week, where among the list of types of housing that you're requiring to be authorized by year-round development, you're adding in manufactured housing.
Right.
And then you've made this change here on page 20 that I highlighted last time we walked through the last version, where you would be prohibiting a municipality from enacting a bylaw that could require a duplex or a triplex to be on an owner occupied lot. And Jerry, you look like you're reading, so I'm pausing.
No, yeah, this has modest concern for me because if you're using state money, and this is something we just didn't fully discuss. I mean, we discussed it a lot, but if you're using public taxpayer dollars, I'm not sure you want to have an ADU not owned by somebody for a while, but that's taken care of elsewhere, I think. Is that-
Yeah, I would say if you're utilizing some sort of state funding source and the state funding requirements are that it be on an owner occupied lot, then, I think those grants funding opportunities are going to have mechanisms to require that. This
Right.
would
So
be,
that's, I think, what we talked about is the grants themselves will rule that.
right, this would be addressed to a municipality. So this is the following development provisions shall apply in every municipality, and stating that the municipality can't enact a bylaw to require it in all instances.
Fine, I'm fine with this section if everyone else is.
Well,
Okay.
you say you could have a situation, in other words, in which there is such a requirement, and then the bylaw, the rule that we have established for municipalities would override what's here. Is that correct?
My understanding, and this request came from Senator Ron Hinsdale, and it was drafted by Ellen, from our office, because this is in her portfolio area, not mine. But
Yep.
Understanding is when you look at this section right above here, it says that, in any district that's served by municipal sewer and water that allows residential development, you're requiring that you have to allow multi-unit dwellings with 4 or fewer units shall be permitted on the same lot size as a single unit dwelling. And my understanding is there's a concern that you've required that you can build these, duplexes and triplexes, et cetera, on single family lots, but municipalities could then come behind and say, okay, that's fine. We have to require you to build that type of housing. But now what we're going to do is we'll just enact a bylaw that says you can only do it if it's an owner occupied lot, thereby somewhat, undermining or circumventing these requirements that you've put in statute. And so this would address that by saying you municipality cannot then subsequently require the duplex that's being built on the single family lot have to be owner occupied. That's my understanding, but I'm not the one who, proposed this. I would have to defer to Senator Ron Hinsdale if I am misunderstanding what her request was.
Okay.
Right. This was trying to get around the loophole of exactly that, of towns enacting ordinances that would undermine sort of the intent of building more densely in appropriate areas in 1A, 1B, our downtowns and village centers with water and sewer.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll ask Senator Ron Hinsdale when she's in if this accomplishes what she wants. I guess the only concern I have is, does this create conflicting language? Should there be a notwithstanding somewhere in that language? And I'm not by any means adamant on that. It's just a question.
Council?
I don't believe so, because I think this is just a list of saying these provisions apply in every municipality. So I don't think you need one. But again, I would have to defer to Ellen because it's her portfolio and she drafted.
Okay.
Okay. We have discussed this and Ellen has been in, and I don't know if Ellen is available to weigh in. Kiara, you might ask if Ellen was available to weigh in. I've asked Sean to weigh in, and he hasn't gotten back to me yet.
Okay.
Okay, let's keep going. Section 11,
Yep, section 11, this is the change to the
right?
state reinvestment program regarding the downtown and village centers. My understanding from the testimony is you have a few, downtown village centers that are not, on the National Register of Historic Places because they're new. And so this would be, allowing those downtowns to, kind of take advantage of this program or be included within the requirements for the program. My understanding, nothing has changed since you passed that language in 328.
Right. Alex Farrell asked for this change, and we voted to include it.
Correct.
And let me look at the language again as to what does that.
Yes, sir. So it's in each of these steps for this program, and then the requirements within that step is that a portion of the center has to be listed or eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. And this is adding in that underlying language to say, unless recognized as a pre-existing designated new town center.
Recognized by the program as a pre-existing designated new town center.
Right.
Yeah,
There are town centers that have been created
Killington.
that aren't necessarily historic. There are
Yeah,
two of them.
Killington is a good example.
Okay, got it.
Okay. We all
Now,
set with that?
recognized by the program, what does that mean? How does something get recognized by the program?
They're accepted into it or not. There's a downtown board. There's a whole
All right.
downtown village center board. And you're accepted into a designated area or not. So it's accepted into the
Yep, I
program.
remember. Okay.
Okay, section 12.
Okay, section 12, this is going to be on the bottom of page 22.
This is your work. This is Cameron's work.
Yes, ma'am. This is the Common Interest Community Report. This is going to keep you employed over the summer. So if you are requiring, you're requiring our office to come back with information on, legal issues, financing and funding issues regarding the changes that were being proposed to common interest communities, leasing of units, authorizing commercial purposes, et cetera, et cetera. So that is the report here.
Is Cameron, I don't know how much closer you've been in touch with Damien, but does anything in the T-bill that addressed EVs in condos affect this, or are you just going to work with Damien as part of the report?
Nothing in the T-bill affects this. If you all recall, S328 came out of your committee, and then Senator Perchlik offered an amendment on the floor to remove the requirement that within this report, our office look at allowing the installation of electric vehicle charging equipment, because they took that section and they did put it into the miscellaneous T-bill on the Senate side. So that portion of the bill that would require installation of electric vehicle charging within a common interest community, that provision, as far as I know, when it came out of the Senate Transportation Committee, there was language in there to require electric vehicle charging. So
There was. I would hope that we would align, as you do this work, if you could align the work they did with this, because obviously the EV chargers are a key piece of the common interest community challenge that we faced.
yeah, so if the language that could be passed makes it ultimately into that bill as you all agree and pass it out, then it would already address the electric vehicle charging. That would go into statute. It wasn't a report in their language. They were amending.
Oh, they were just changing the law. I understand. So I just want to make sure we can use that in any way. And now that Damien has done some diving into common interest communities, maybe he can be helpful.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so then the next report, we have the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board's Farm Worker Housing Report. And there was
Right.
one change that was recommended by Senator Ron Hinsdale and kind of agreed to by VHCB about ensuring the report looks at the impact of farm worker housing, but also identifies barriers to improving and expanding on-farm housing as a whole. So that is one change from the last version that we looked at.
Right.
And then
I'm fine with
lastly, section 14 is the effective date of July 1 of 2026.
You know,
Okay.
this is an issue that pops up every year for year after year after year after year without a solution. Would it make sense to add to this and then to also propose legislation if deemed needed to resolve these issues instead of simply saying a report and then throw it up to us and then it sits around for 3 months and nothing happens? This time and time again, we see this.
Well, I'm living in hope that this report, remind us, Cameron, it goes to the ag committees and to the housing committees?
Let's see, it says a report to the General Assembly, so they'll just submit it, and then our office can let, whatever committees of jurisdiction are interested be aware that it's been submitted.
Right. I would hope that given Randy, as you have just said, it remains unresolved, that we either I think that we want
We want a solution. That's what we want.
In the ag committee and the housing committee and the HCB, who is I'm sure listening, that I would want to make sure that Polly kept this front and center and that we would address it next year.
Well, I just wonder if we need something to say, what's the result? What's the result that's going to come out of this? It's going to be a report. Is it going to be a report with recommendations for action if needed?
Yes, I am sure it will be, because they're going to be addressing the barriers. And if there are barriers, we need to address those.
Can I, this is no knock on VHCB, but they aren't as often talking about the regulatory barriers as much as they are talking about money. So I agree with Senator Brock that if we want to be specific about why we don't have enough on-farm housing, it's A&R and regulation. So I don't know if we want to be clearer about who carries the work forward or ask VHCB to really focus on regulatory barriers.
We asked them to focus on barriers. So I think that in that one assumes all barriers, but we could say all barriers. I think
we need to be specific enough in order to get action, because we've been dealing with this year after year after year, and we never get a real answer.
So I think at this hour, we got to get this bill out of here. So we could say barriers, including all barriers, including regulatory, and ask
permitting and regulatory.
Yes, and ask that it be sent to specific committees so that they will address it. If chairs get reports, we tend to address them. And so I would suggest that we then add all barriers, including, what did you say, Keisha? Regulatory?
Permitting and regulatory.
Permitting and regulatory issues. I would add those, Cameron, in whatever way you can. And
financial
I would urge that we send the report to the 4 committees, the 2 housing committees and the 2 ag committees.
Should financial go in there as well? Regulatory, permitting, and financial issues.
I would say financial is the one that they often do try to express. So it doesn't feel like it needs, and that's, VHCB is a purveyor of dollars to leverage projects. So I feel like if we're asking VHCB to look at permitting and regulatory barriers, that's the more specific one that they need to, bring in some counsel.
All right, well, let it go.
Okay, thank you, Randy. I think let's add that, though. I think that's a helpful catch. Randy asked the question, Acacia, before you came on, we were addressing the loophole with municipalities and the ordinances in multi-unit housing. And I just, if you had any thought on that, as I recall, we were all fine with that language. But the key that we were trying to get at in those sections 9 and 10 were not just so that municipalities couldn't undermine the intent of building density on water, on towns and city centers that have water and sewer, village centers that have water and sewer. Are you still there?
Yeah, I just switched to my computer. But I think I heard everything you said. I'd like to see the language where it stands. I agree. I don't think we
Look at
solved it with the ultimate change that was made. I'm hearing from communities, well, from folks in communities that they feel like their municipality will now not honor their
So
their
could
sewer hookup.
Cam, could you just pull up sections 9 and 10? Because I think those are the last two that we're left with.
This is the bylaw change regarding owner occupied that we were discussing a moment ago.
Oh, that one's not the,
Now, the municipal,
I thought that was in a different bill. But
And-
So for municipal zoning, here are the changes that you have in this bill. This
Right.
is the change that you all made on a floor amendment to S 328 to remove state regulations of permits from an area served by municipal sewer and water infrastructure. And then you added fire district here.
So can you go back up to, I'm looking at Romanet I-2, municipally adopted service and capacity agreements. I mean, I think the frustration is without a number of feet from being, so, like, the whole thing.
we're not
is
going
we
to
were
get,
trying to define what along municipal water and sewer means, and they wouldn't already have a connection. But okay, so Cameron, work with me here, because the whole point was to say those service and capacity agreements cannot discriminate against multifamily housing if they were going to allow single family housing. I'm still worried that doesn't, like, I think a town can still say, no, we don't want any new structures here, even if there are already structures somewhere, like farm structures.
these are Ellen's sections. Ellen isn't with us at the moment, unfortunately.
If I could jump in really quickly, she said that she could jump on, but she needs a few minutes. So if we wanted to wait, she could probably be in
Okay.
about a couple of minutes.
We only have David until 10. So I'd like to, if we can vote this out by 10, we can make I can't answer that question, Keisha, because
The other question that I asked that was not fully answered was regarding section 6 about the risk of advancing funds.
yeah, I realize you asked that question, and I've texted Sean, and Kiara, you might ask Sean if he's able to hop on. He hasn't responded to my text, so I've asked him, can you weigh in on Zoom now? And he hasn't responded, but he may not. I don't even know where he is. I mean, maybe off at a conference somewhere. So if you could just ask him, that would be great.
Sean,
Gilpin, who runs the VHIP program. I could also ask Alex. We could also, if you could just ask Alex and Sean if they could jump in on the Zoom with this VHIP question, that would be helpful. I'll copy Alex too. I had just sent it to Sean.
I just texted Alex because I think he knows exactly what I'm talking about with this issue as well.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, because we have, okay, I just asked him if he could jump on to this Zoom too.
What I want to do is say something like, it shall be assumed that if there are other connections in that area, that it would be discrimination to not offer a connection here. But that's like not legal language.
No. Ellen is, I hope, Kara, so you've invited Ellen, and if you'd be kind enough to invite Alex and Sean Gilpin in to join us, that would be great. I haven't gotten a response from
I
either.
just invited Alex, I'll see what he says, and inviting Sean right now.
Great. Uh, and Sean is SHAUN.
Yep.
Got it. Okay, great. Any other than those two sections, how are we feeling? Because I think on the whole, other than that, we're fine with the rest of the bill. We have Randy's question on section 6, and we have clarification on sections 9 and 10. But I think other than that, we're good to go. Is that correct? Good. So let's let us and great. So if we can just pivot for a sec while we wait to see if anyone can join us. Kara, just jump in if there's something to
Will
let
do,
us.
let you know.
Cam, do you have any other thoughts before we just shift subjects for a sec?
I have thoughts, man, on this.
Okay, so we'll wait and see if Ellen and Sean or Alex can join us. We'll put a pin in that bill. I'm just going to pivot for a second to landlord tenant before we move to it. We've invited the key players to be in the room, no cameras on, but there if we need their advice and counsel or clarity on something. So we've invited Jean and Chris, Jean Murray, Chris Donnelly, and Judge Zone and Terry we've invited to testify. On the bill, Nodder is very keen on I am hoping and expecting that we will just strip this bill to be the key things that judiciary has sent with a few of our amendments, which I think Nodder will be maybe okay with in terms of the renaming of the study and stuff. He is very keen on keeping the judiciary sections, and we're pretty clear on what's our section and what's not. But I would really entertain at this moment that we think about just doing a streamlined version of the, if we can get to the Good Samaritan, the no trespass, and the study. I think those are the 3 key things we need to get over to the House now so that we can go into conference committee and do something. So
Senator Brooks and Ellen just jumped on the Zoom.
great, perfect. I'm just putting that out there. And let's go back to housing. Okay, Ellen, we welcome you.
Hi.
Hi,
Good
sorry.
morning.
Sorry, I think we're in good shape on 775, but Keisha we had some concerns that we wanted to clarify on sections 9 and 10, which are your municipal zoning sections.
Okay.
Ellen, I'll pull it up in a second and share. You all bear with me for 30 seconds so I can get an email off.
While Cameron's doing that, Ellen, I'll just tee this up to say, in the game of whack-a-mole of trying to actually make our language match our intent, I'd like to repeat that, when we passed the Home Act, we believed we were saying that multifamily housing could not be discriminated against along water and sewer infrastructure. And then we've had, I've followed many individual cases in municipalities where unless they already had some connection onto the property, they were they have been once again told you don't have a water or sewer connection or both. And therefore, we don't have to honor giving you a water or sewer connection just because you are along a road with water and sewer. We then heard that there are towns that want to maintain view sheds, et cetera, that are very important, but in the removal of the language about a number of feet from along water and sewer, and more of a non-discrimination clause, it leaves it open for discrimination. I have emails, between towns and community members that are saying, yeah, now that the legislature took the number of feet out, we have no requirement to give you a wastewater hookup. So, I really want to solve this. This is, a lot of the reason we're being, we're sort of hearing urgency in people's voices around Act 181. These are farmers who want to get a water hookup for a small on-farm business.
So we are where we are. I mean, we are really under the gun in terms of time. Is there anything that, Ellen, is this language can we do anything with the language we currently have? Does this language address Keisha's concern, or do we need to add something additional? I thought we had landed this after all the testimony with the Shelburne people, and we had quite a bit of testimony on this.
Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. I mean, that kind of sounded like a question for Senator Hinsdale. If this language matches her intent. This language on page 17 came out of the discussions your committee had on the floor amendment with Senate Natural Resources. This language does not change a town's authority on whether or not they can issue connections to their own systems. This is just about the area as either defined in a municipality's zoning or as the default for what the area is based on this language. And it is not.
Here's what I might suggest, that we take out the words service and.
What line?
11.
Okay.
So the problem is we all agreed with ANR 3 years ago that if they have capacity issues, they have capacity issues. But a municipally adopted service agreement is essentially saying they can continue to discriminate against areas that they had been discriminating against before for hookups. So I'd like to take out service and.
And okay. And do you think that accomplishes it, Keisha? So it would read municipality adopted capacity agreements, or?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to, from all my experience, I'm going to go ahead and say that I think would send a message to the municipalities that they can't say, we don't want any new service here on this side of the road where there's already structures.
Right. Ellen?
Okay, I'm happy to make that change.
Thank you, Ellen.
I mean,
Okay. And we'll see, and then we
Yeah,
have
I'm gonna keep trying. So I texted Ann Watson just to say, like, I'm touching this again because we keep running into this issue of not being able to clarify our intent fully.
Great.
Yeah, I don't know if we want an intent section, but I'm not a huge fan of those since they're just in the
No,
green
I think
or whatever.
so. We could add an intent section before we get to the floor if we want. With that change, are you okay with that section, Keisha?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Kiara, any news about either Alex or Sean being available?
Alex was not available. He was driving while he was driving, so he sent me to Sean, and I have not heard back from Sean yet. I called him and I sent him an email.
Yeah, well, that's good. I've texted him, so we've done all the touches we can touch. Um, so, Randy, I think, if you're willing for us to continue to explore it, if we have to pull it out or change it, we can do that on the floor, with an amendment. But if you don't mind, let's verify that they can, because I'm pretty sure they talked, anyway, I vaguely remember that they talked about this, but I would love to be able to vote this out if we could now before David has to leave at 10. And then we will further clarify section 6 for you, Randy, as soon as possible. And definitely, obviously, before we go on the floor. This has to go, I don't know where else this has to go. I don't think this has to go too many other places. It probably has to go to finance for the LIAC edition, but it went through last time. It's already been, most of these provisions have already been through the other committees, so it shouldn't be, I think, too long.
Yeah, well, the question I have about question 6 is definitely a finance question.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
surprised.
We
I
will,
don't remember any real discussion of it in finance. David, do you remember anything?
or no, Tom. Tom, do you remember
Oh,
anything?
Sorry, it is Tom.
I
Yes.
do not, but I would also say, Senator Brock, we certainly will get the bill and we can continue that
We can do it then.
conversation. And so I'm comfortable with Keisha's change just made. And if KM gives me a draft number, I'm happy to make a motion if that's what we're looking to do to move this thing along in the process.
Great, thank you. Cameron, do you have a draft number for the changes that we just talked about?
It's going to be a draft 4.1, and Ellen, I'm happy to strike those 2 words. I had to send it to editing for the changes you wanted on the farm worker report. So as soon as I get it back, I'll pull the doc number up, strike the 2 words that Senator Rump still requested there, but it's going to be a draft 4.1 when I get it back.
Great.
I would move favorably H775 amended with draft 4.1 as discussed during this committee meeting.
Thank you, Thomas. Any further discussion?
Just to make sure you're all clear, because I'm not sharing it with you right now, because it's being edited on the farm worker housing report. I added in to the committees of jurisdiction specifically, so that's House Agriculture, House General Housing, Senate Agriculture, and this committee. And then I added in that it includes, the report has to include information on the barriers, and I put in including permitting and regulatory barriers.
And
Right.
Sean Quinn also did just jump on the Zoom if you wanted to ask him a question.
Okay, so thank you, Sean. We apologize that we're barraging you at every
All right.
possible.
I've been
Point.
summoned.
So before we vote this bill out, because we are wanting to do that in the next few minutes, we had a question about section 6 with VHIP.
Okay.
And our concern, Randy's concern, and I think the committee's concern is with your ability to now advance financing to a developer who's doing the VHIP program. If it fails and it goes belly up, what is your mechanism for clawing back that grant?
Yeah, it would be legal action. So I mean, my team has talked about this. We've talked about it with the home ownership centers a little bit. We would be very reticent to forward fund projects where those the ones that would require forward funding in order to be viable tend to be the riskier projects to begin with. So we're grappling a bit right now with winding down the ARPA spending. Which those dollars all have tight deadlines on them, and there are a few projects that we've been spending an inordinate amount of time on, trying to make sure they either make it by the deadline or there's some sort of repayment process. We would want to be looking really closely at any applicant that was requesting a forward payment, and the only it would be either legal action or we do have a covenant that's in the title for the property. So we could wait until the property was refinanced or sold and recoup the funds through that title covenant.
That's not, frankly, tremendously comforting. You know, the kind of exposure that we might get from advancing funds. Do you have any sense of, you know, an upper dollar amount that we may be talking about in Section 6?
I don't. I mean, we would want to put together some policies with the home ownership centers that really are very stringent about you know, the application requirements and the you know, the application in general and the project viability before we were forwarding funding. It's definitely not our preferred method.
Well, that again, the reason is that you're doing it for these particular applicants, presumably because they can't get financing elsewhere. Is that typically the case?
That is typically the case, yes.
And that means that they have a higher degree of risk than your ordinary project.
Yes,
And my
absolutely.
question really is whether or not the state becomes exposed by doing this to a bankruptcy, for example, of a developer, and that we wind up holding the bag.
So, Sean, who asked for this?
I
Who
do
asked
not
for
know,
this?
actually.
Yeah.
It was not us.
House General Committee inserted this.
If you have this concern, Randy, I would suggest we consider striking it. I mean, I think for some, until Sean and the department can figure out a way to claw it back in a way that satisfies, I mean, we're all so protective of state dollars. I
In
think
effect, some type of guarantee, whether it be a third party, whether it be some form of quote insurance unquote. But for us to take the risk of being the financer for developers, I'm not sure that that's what we intended to do.
I'm not sure this would be taken advantage of very often. I mean, I see this as something that is would be used rarely. Is that right, Sean?
I would expect so. For what it's worth, we are actually in conversations with New England Federal Credit Union about a special loan product that would be specifically for VHIP. I would much rather see us develop something like that so that there can be proper underwriting and the backing of the credit union. We would not recommend forward funding as it's currently established.
Then I would
Why don't we
vote,
strip that piece then?
and Cam, if you're still with us, I assume you're still with us because you're with us all morning.
I'd like to withdraw my motion.
What, Thomas?
I
You have a
want to
motion on
withdraw
the
the
floor.
previous motion so that we can reconsider the new draft.
Would you be kind enough to withdraw your motion? Thank you. And Cameron, could we strike just that language of section? Is that all that section 6 did? I think it is.
It made a technical amendment to the VHIP program, so I could just strike the new.
Advancing money piece.
Right. Give me 1 second. Have you posted?
I have not, you know.
I'll make this a 4.2.
Okay, sorry.
That way it's different from what we use.
Okay, no, I appreciate, and Sean, we really appreciate you jumping in. We're sorry, we are really under an extreme time pressure, or I wouldn't have asked you.
I appreciate your work, and not a problem. It's the beauty of our new interweb connectivity.
No, it's true. This is the one. Well, there are a few things to thank COVID for. $600 million in housing was one of them, but definitely Zoom is what. So, Cam, we can just strike that sentence. I don't have it up in front of me, but I have it here.
It's done. I will, give me 1 second. I'll share my screen and walk through these 3
Okay,
changes.
and then we're going to vote. And then
right.
Thomas, I'd ask you for a second motion if you'd be kind enough to do so.
Any other questions for me this morning?
No, Sean, I think
All
that
right.
was super helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Draft number 4.2, Cameron.
Yes, sir.
I would move favorably H775, draft number 4.2, reflecting the changes discussed in this committee meeting.
Thank you, Thomas. Much appreciated. So
Very quickly.
yeah.
Okay, here's that section, section 6, which is related to VHIP. As you can see, I've removed the subsection A, the changes that would authorize the upfront. So you can keep the section because there's this technical amendment to the annual report. If everybody's okay with that.
Yeah.
And then we get to here on what is now page 16. So as you can see, I've struck the service and that change that was requested. And then lastly, if you get to the reports, apologies for the scroll. I've added in for this farm worker housing report that it would go to the House Committees on Agriculture, Food Resilience and Forestry, General and Housing, Senate Committee on Agriculture, and this committee. And then we've included identifying barriers, including permitting and regulatory barriers to improve and expand on farm housing. Those are the changes that I made from the version that you first reviewed, 3.1.
Very good. Thank you all. This was, I think, great work in the time that we've made good work, done good work. Thank you very much. So we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Then I would ask Senator Weeks to call the roll.
Senator Brock,
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Yep.
Senator Rom Hinsdale,
Yes.
myself, yes. Senator Clarkson.
Yes. Thank you very much. We can discuss who's gonna, no one's taking it anywhere, I think at the moment, because no one can sign it. So, we can discuss, I think we could report this together because I think there are pieces that some people care a lot about who might like to report it, but I might ask that Keisha and David and I report it, if that's okay. We'll figure out who does what sections. Is that okay? Great. Thank you all very much. And David, good luck. We
Thank
will
you.
fill you in on landlord tenant, and we're very grateful. Thanks.
I'll see you all tomorrow.
Thank you very much. We look, and we'll meet at 9, even though you and Randy will join us when you're able. We appreciate that you have a meeting. So we'll fill you in on that discussion.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm saying this while Senator Weeks is still on because you might lose a quorum at 9:15 then, because that's when I'm supposed to go to Judiciary to talk about the landlord tenant bill changes tomorrow.
Oh, I didn't know you were speaking to those. Oh, okay. Well, that makes it a little challenging. Okay, let's not take up time now figuring
Just
one way or the other, we will meet somehow. Okay. Well, that's a challenge. We will, but okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, David. We are now going to pivot to landlord tenant. And Cameron, we still have you. And we are, I think we are, we all set? Cameron, you've adjusted to the next bill.
Ready to go whenever you are, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. That you are terrific. So we have in the sections, I have proposed earlier, in case I can't remember if you were on or not, that we consider, just given the time we have, that we really focus on passing out Good Samaritan, no trespass, and the rental housing docket study, and make those the key centerpieces. And the bifurcated lease piece. If we could pass those 4 pieces out in the next day or two, by the end of tomorrow, by tomorrow.
I think today, I don't know. Are we going to look at a new draft right now?
I'd love to do it today. The challenge is we don't have everyone to vote, but we can keep it open for David. And so Cameron, could you take us through what we have at the moment?
Are we going to look at something?
I was going to say, I have not drafted up an amendment. I can walk you through things that you've discussed on Friday, but Madam Chair, if you all are wanting to pivot in the direction that you just identified, then if you give me maybe 5 or 10 minutes, I can probably have something for you to look at, if that makes sense.
Can I make a different suggestion?
Sure.
I think this could be shorter just so we're transparent, because it's kind of, I think what we started to do Friday, but maybe we just walk through and we quickly say, like, we're taking this section out, and we don't make Cameron try and
I
edit
would
on the fly.
agree. I think the first proposal, Cameron, was one I think that we should do just because, we're not, yeah. So because we did discuss sections that were not judiciaries, and that were ours alone. So why don't we just quickly walk through it and see where we all are on the pieces? And if people are wanting to keep more that were in our sections, happy to do that. I'm just trying to figure out how we can move this with all of us on board.
Yeah.
And,
I generally do want to take out sections that need more time. I just want to make sure we all agree to
Okay.
that together.
Cameron, if you'd share your screen and walk us through, I still have draft 5.1.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. This is draft 5.1 of the Judiciary Committee's report. And I've made some highlighted and strikes, but I'm just want to be clear, this is just for illustrative purposes here. This is the Judiciary Committee's report. So if you all are making changes and you're settling on the changes that you want to make, I need to draft up an amendment for this committee. And
Right.
so walking through section 1, you've got these definitions of domestic abuse, protected tenant, sexual assault, and stalking. That's all relevant to the bifurcation of the rental agreement section. You've got the section related to rent increases, prohibiting a rent cap. And one of the questions that was raised was about senior housing.
Right.
And I was able to find this section in the landlord tenant chapter, the residential rental agreement chapter, that talks about owner of a privately owned age restricted residential property that is not licensed pursuant to 33 Chapter 71 or 8 BSA Chapter 151. So what I have not been able to do to date is to go figure out for these facilities that are licensed, what is their, what is the cost per individual and how is that structured? That's not within my portfolio, and I'm going to have to talk to some other attorneys in our office related to that. So this is a section that would just be a private facility that is age restricted. You can have private housing that is age restricted for individuals above a certain age. And so this would require that any rent increase would have to have a 60-day notice, and it has to be provided to the Department of Housing and Community Development as well as to the tenants. And then it has to include the information on 1, 2, 3, proposed rent increase, the effective date, the copy of the resident's rights, and the percentage of the increase over the current rents. This is very similar to what you have in the residential rental agreement chapter itself, which requires a notice if rent is going to be increased. And this is for all tenants. Increase in rent shall take effect on the first day of the rental period following no less than 60 days actual notice. You can't raise the rent during a written rental agreement period. If you've agreed to a certain amount of rent, you have to, you can't break a contract and raise it. But if you don't have a written agreement, or before the end of a rental agreement, if you want a new rent cost to take effect after the end of the written period, then you have to provide at least 60 days notice. So it's very similar to that in the age restricted housing piece. You just have to include an additional level of detail for the individual, and you have to provide that information to the HCD. again, I have not had the chance to speak with the other attorneys in our office about, licensed, age restricted housing, if you will, under
So-
30 PSA.
So what, in the interest of moving us along, sorry, Cameron, I think we should take this section out. We added that other language to the age restricted housing section last year because we gave VHCB and its partners essentially the right of first refusal when a age restricted housing property goes on the market. They're facing a lot of uncertainty where they get multiple rent increases when they don't even know their building is for sale. We're not going to solve that with any of this language, and really, this is a big change and I think I asked last time, if they have a rental agreement, you can't raise the rent anyway. This is coming up more with senior housing because it keeps changing hands. I always like to do a deep dive into age restricted housing because it's so needed.
Yeah.
But I think we should let go of this section.
I would agree. I would love to move this forward for future, but I think for the moment, as you've heard, I think we should probably anything that requires more thought and more time, we're going to sadly have to delegate to future to a group who's going to think more fully about it and come back with all that work. So I would agree. I would support that move.
Okay. Senator Brock, Senator Chittenden, I'm gonna, if you feel free to interrupt me, if not, I'll keep you moving along.
So it's the proposal is to remove, is it just section 4455 you're proposing to remove, or subchapter 2 in its entirety?
Depending on where you all land with how many provisions of this section 1 you want to remove, subchapter 2 is just the heading for these subsequent sections. So it may stay or it may be removed. It will depend on.
But I believe subchapter 2.
Your scalpels are.
I believe that also includes the retaliatory section.
So we've just gotten through this chunk, and now we're going to 4456A to see if,
Well,
right?
There's 4456A, and then there's 4461.
Okay, so we're moving on to 4456A.
That's fine with me.
So we're right. Moving to the next section, which is the residential rental application. So current law is the landlord or the landlord's agent shall not charge for an application fee. You have this definition of application fee. And then if you recall on the next page, there are the changes about the background of the credit check, actual cost, etc. You all straw polled 3, 4, and C on Friday to strike it. So that's why I highlighted it.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it would be removed. So what remains is cannot charge an application fee, and there's a definition of this application fee.
Oh,
And
yeah.
what we left you all with was the point that the definition of application fee does not include charging for a credit or a background check. So if you want to specifically prohibit charging for those items, then we need to include those two things in this definition.
Well, I worried about the third-party processing payment, so I would say we not touch this either right now. I don't think it's a good idea.
We could also, yeah, I agree. I mean, I just don't think we have the time to go through and do all of this work. I mean, I sadly think we have been constrained, and it will be further discussed in conference committee, obviously. And I think thinking
That's not
about
obvious yet.
it will be discussed. So I would propose this as well. I would second that recommendation.
The application fee is out.
Okay, moving on. Next section.
Let me just look at what the other pieces that are taken out of that section.
Yes, sir. This was, so they coincide with above where it says that you cannot charge the application fee, adding a definition of what an application fee is, but then the remainder were if a landlord is going to charge for a credit check, then the landlord could charge actual costs. But the landlord could not charge if the tenant, unless the tenant provided a current credit report, in which case the landlord could not charge the tenant for it. And then the sub 4 was if the landlord charges for the background or the credit check, the landlord had to provide a copy of the results to the tenant.
Okay. And we're striking that entirely, and there's nothing in current law that deals with this, correct?
It would default, it would go back to what the current statutory language is, which is this subsection A, which says that a landlord shall not charge an application fee. And that's all it says.
But that's current law.
Yeah,
Yes.
I understand.
That's what he said.
Okay, so I just want to remind everybody, we have Jean Murray and Chris Donnelly on this call. If people want to ask them questions, they're here in the room with us.
Okay.
And when we're going to get Judge Zone and Terry, do you have time constraints? Because we could also go straight to the housing study if you have concerns. We just wanted to fill you in with what our thinking has been.
I'd really like to go in order.
Okay.
And I think
great.
we can get through it if we go in order. And I'll start by saying I think the whole security deposit section should come out.
Well, it's going to require time. Again, we did no straw poll on this, and I think that there's much to discuss. That because my understanding, people were okay with the first month's rent, and then and that's the rent, and then 1 month security deposit, which is 2 months total, and we have 3 months. I think it's a big discussion. I mean, it's a discussion we began, and it's going to take more time than we have. So I would also propose striking all of a security section, the security deposit section.
Saw a thumbs up from Senator Chipton. So, okay. So striking this section as well.
And there are currently no constraints on security deposits. Is that correct in current law?
Under the state statute, there is no constraint. So there's no, the landlord may charge however much the landlord wishes to charge. However, there are a few municipalities that have enacted ordinances that limit how much a landlord charge. Clinton being one of them. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. I can live with striking this right now.
Okay.
I think it's just for right now. I think we need this work done, and we need a full proposal next year that may address everything we don't get through this year, because clearly, just as Mark and I had hoped for, a lot of these areas need to be addressed and clarified. Okay, we're to 4465, which is the retaliatory conduct prohibited, and we have, I believe, a proposal that Gail and the network have worked on. Is that right, Cameron?
No, ma'am. I think there was a proposal or there was discussion and request from external parties to include within the prohibitions here, or the inclusion of you cannot retaliate against a tenant for requesting a reasonable accommodation due to a disability. So currently, you have this section that says a landlord cannot retaliate against individuals for taking certain actions. And the recommendation or the bill as it came over from the House was to add in to that list of protected actions that the tenant has taken any legal action authorized by law against the landlord, or the tenant has contacted law enforcement to respond to an instance of domestic abuse.
Right, which the network made very good argument to it. This is designed to protect the abused. So, I mean, I think all of us.
But they were talking about the bifurcation more so.
Right, the bifurcation is the other language.
I tried to make the case that this becomes difficult for the landlord to even talk about the bifurcation with the tenant if it's seen as potential retaliation to discuss any action that could be taken if law enforcement has been contacted. I really think this section is not thought through. And I would not deal with retaliation. I would deal much more with termination.
Okay. I think that is what we probably want to focus on, those bifurcation, Good Samaritan, no trespass study. I think those are the 4 pieces that we can actually probably do at this point. So I would agree that would be that is where I would go. So I would support striking this section as well and get to the retaliation section. I mean, to the bifurcation section.
Okay.
Randy and
Agree.
Agreed.
yeah, I just, time is against us here.
Is,
And,
and this is
huge, these are big issues and right, we wait.
Okay, so let's move to the next section, which is the changes regarding termination of tenancy. As a reminder, the Judiciary Committee, their recommended change here is to strip out all of the changes to the notification period for termination. So what you have left were a few provisions. The subdivision 3 was the what you all have been referring to as the Good Samaritan subdivision, where a landlord could not terminate a rental agreement due to a person seeking medical assistance for a drug overdose, being the subject of a good faith request for medical assistance, or being at the scene of a drug overdose. I've already highlighted it because you straw polled removing this out on Friday. I'll pause there.
Right, we straw polled taking it out. Nodder has asked us to reconsider this straw poll and asked us to keep it in. I've had many emails about asking us to keep it in. I think the concern that Randy and David had, and Thomas, I can't remember where you were.
It does not make or break to me that this section gets removed. I shared the concerns that were expressed when by Senator Weeks, and I also was under the impression from that discussion we were contemplating getting this bill out on Friday morning. I don't think we need to strike this. This is in the judiciary's realm. They voted 5-0, so I am always deferential to committees of jurisdiction.
Okay.
So I'd love to hear Senator Brock's thoughts.
Well, the thoughts that I have are this provides protection to someone. What do you do after the 3rd or 4th overdose?
Yeah, that's the concern I heard from you and David, was the possible repeated calls to do this.
And that, I mean, that language is in the no trespass. So it's essentially saying you can't have a pattern of drug use, period, because drug use is generally a breach of a rental agreement, as we heard from at least the landlords who were present on Friday. This is, in the split decision that somebody is likely to die, do they think, oh, I can't get in trouble for this, so I'm not going to call for emergency help?
We do not want people
We don't want people to die, absolutely.
retaliate.
At the same time, we don't want to support or force landlords to support the use of their property for rampant drug use.
My guess is that if there's one drug overdose, that, that isn't a pattern of rampant drug use, they will have put a system in place to make sure something like this, doesn't happen again. Not that you can't control if someone overdoses or not, but not that there's this ongoing pattern of people breaking the law in that apartment. There are really vulnerable times when someone can overdose And it isn't always a pattern of just people overdosing all the time who are staying with somebody. So I would think that a lot of the other no trespass provisions would hold. For example, if somebody overdoses and they were no trespassed already from the apartment, then they can call for medical assistance, but they can still be held criminally liable in other instances for allowing someone who is no trespass to be on the property. There are probably a lot of other things, I guess I would say, that will give people pause from calling for medical assistance, but hopefully maybe not that first time, or if there's not already a pattern of behavior that's being addressed in court.
But as was pointed out, as we listened to testimony on this is a disease. You know, substance abuse disorder is a disease. And for us to be punitive in this moment strikes me as not our best selves, and also not good for anyone involved. I mean, it's to take this away at the moment for me is just punitive. I'm happy. I think there, you know, if we put in a pattern or a number of times, it can't happen over. You can never tell if somebody's struggling to overcome this addiction. It's a piece they may always relapse, and you know, there may be sadly relapses a year or two apart. I mean, but I don't think we can be punitive when it comes to life and death, and to have people choosing to not call and dying is really a terrible, terrible choice. So I think that we have to not honor the judiciary's choice here. Bob Norris and Chris Matos, it was a 5-0 vote on this. And I would encourage us to chat with our colleagues on judiciary if you have qualms about this, but I would support keeping this in its entirety as it is now.
I want to see something done about it, and in effect, and I'm speculating. I'm not at a final solution, but it seems to me that there should be no requirement that the landlord continue to manage what might be a drug house, and that's what I'm trying to get around. I agree that saving lives is important.
Yeah.
But I'm not particularly enthusiastic about having it happen over and over and over again.
Yeah.
We hear you on that. I hear you. The challenge
It affects other tenants. It affects the rest of the building. It affects the landlords. It affects a number of other things.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely.
I think, and I like judiciary deals a lot with the like really hard realities, you know, that we don't have to think about as much in other committees, like someone dying of an overdose and being in the building. You know, that is also really traumatic for everyone else in the building. You know, they see more of those cases where someone's body gets like half buried on a property because they died of an overdose and nobody wanted to do anything about it. I mean, if you just read the headlines, usually what makes the headlines is more when there's a death, and you know that alone is kind of a permanent trauma for everyone involved and the community. And the pattern of behavior we're trying to address with the no trespass and more rights for landlords.
So I have a request, Randy.
Also,
I have a request from Chris Donnelly to weigh in here on this thought. Chris, would you be kind enough to weigh in?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate this conversation and the concerns that Senator Brock raised. Really, the tools that we're looking for in the bill are to address what you described as a drug house. And that's at the same time, if someone is dying, they need medical attention. We need to give them support. And that's not going to get you know, that's not going to get resolved by saying that they can't call. You know, we need to protect their lives, but we need the other tools to actually address the issues that you're describing. And I appreciate the way that Senator Hinsdale has described this. This is really, we need to make sure that we're making the other tenants safe in a building. But
Absolutely.
we just can't let someone die because the person feared to call the police or the
Agreed.
or the ambulance.
But it seems to me that the landlord, if the landlord is aware that there is a drug problem involving one of their apartments, one of their dwelling units, they have a responsibility to try to do something about it if it affects other tenants.
Well,
Right, and that's the whole reason we brought this whole bill before
Yeah.
you, was to address
Yeah.
that.
Right.
At the same time, we just can't let people die. That's
I
just
think the work, Randy, I think the work that the rental housing study is work that the court's going to do, and hopefully other stakeholders will help them, is to address the dangerous tenant, which judiciary chose not to address, the more rapid eviction of dangerous tenants. And this is a piece of what you're talking about. The no trespass deals with it in part, not as fully as if they had addressed the dangerous tenant, but it will be addressed next year because we're going to have hopefully a report and a recommendation on how to do exactly what you're talking about. Is that fair, Chris? Yeah. Chris, that will be addressed in the study. So the dangerous tenant, the piece that
correct.
wanted to address.
Correct.
Okay, great. Randy, how are you feeling now? Are we okay to keep this section in?
Let's keep it in for the moment. I am still not enthusiastic about the section or its wording and whether or not some sort of a reporting requirement might be considered.
Yes.
I can bring that up with judiciary tomorrow because they would know what is already reported when emergency services or the police get involved.
So, Terry or Judge or Tom, Judge Zone, is anything like that reported at the moment?
I'm sorry, what was the specific data point?
The question, hi, Terry, welcome. The question is, is there any reporting that is done to the court or legally? And maybe Jean and Chris are the better ones to ask this question of, but is there any reporting if there is?
Well, Madam Chair, what I'm worried you're asked, the point of the section is that it's not used against them in court.
Right. And so, but currently,
but other people capture that reporting, like the Department of Health and local law enforcement. That won't change. The question is it raised in court? That's the heart of it.
Exactly, because currently it is probably recorded somewhere. I mean, obviously with the Department of Health and with some other places, but is it reported at all, Terry, in the judiciary?
Terry Corson, State Court Administrator. Senator Clarkson, to my knowledge, no. As Senator Ram Hinsdale said, if it comes up in the course of a hearing, as in evidence, et cetera, certainly. But otherwise, I'm not aware of any data points the court itself would keep on that.
Right. Okay.
That is part of my point in all of this. If a landlord is suffering a potential loss, not as severe, of course, as the loss of life, if he or she is operating an apartment building in which is an apartment of people who are overdosing on drugs, particularly if it is more of a frequent nature, and that has an effect on their investment. It also has an effect on their other tenants. The question is, if there is a situation like that mentioned here in the bill, is there any reporting mechanism that gets either health or law enforcement authorities alerted to the fact that this is a place where a drug overdose has probably occurred? If, for example, the landlord is obligated or allowed, depending upon how you word it, to make a notification to either the health or law enforcement authorities about the problem so that people are aware of it. And simply calling somebody doesn't mean anybody's going to do anything about it.
So Madam Chair, may I jump in?
Yes, Cam, of course.
So for a few things, just to clarify, this section is related to someone seeking medical assistance. So
Right.
just to the last point, Senator Brock, it would be about the tenant reaching out to call for medical assistance, or someone reaching out and calling for medical assistance on behalf of a tenant who may be overdosing. So it is protecting that situation. And one other thing I just wanted to mention, or two other quick points. This isn't about court process. Now, the question of this may come up in court in an ejectment action, but what we are in right now is we're in the termination of the rental agreement section. And it's saying that a landlord cannot terminate a rental agreement because someone has called 911 to seek medical assistance for a drug overdose. Now, the question about whether or not the termination of the rental agreement and the subsequent ejectment of that tenant is due to an underlying request for medical assistance, ultimately a court could weigh in on that during an ejectment action. But ultimately, this isn't in the ejectment subchapter. This is in the chapter related to residential rental agreements, and saying that a landlord cannot terminate the agreement because of this seeking of medical assistance. So I just wanted to clarify those two things. As far as if there is information, I would assume there's information available to the public about the number of, medical overdoses in the state, but, it's a question I would defer to the judiciary team on whether that information is made public and where.
Right, but this is in our section. This is in our sections. This is we have had the report in the last few days that happily drug overdoses are down, which is a terrific news. This availability of naloxone and is certainly helping enormously. I don't know what data we could get this morning in time for us to vote on this. I don't know what else we would add at the moment, but Randy, do you have a specific suggestion about how could we move on and think about this?
I guess one of the things that you could do is, in the event that, and again, I'm looking here though, probably for something that is a judicial end of a process rather than simply a report of a suspicion about a process of something going on. But it seems to me that if the landlord had reasonable belief or desirably firm evidence that the apartment is being used as a drug house, they should have the ability to begin eviction and not simply have to wait forever. Deciding what that point is.
Judiciary decided not to include that part of the bill. They only included this, which so they asked the court study to address the danger the what you're talking about. So this is really, as Cameron says, this is really requiring that this is prohibiting a landlord terminating something because someone has called for help. I mean, I don't know.
Well, maybe we need to think about this a moment. We could terminate someone because you go in and you know that there's a sale of drugs that's taken place, but it's going to take the courts forever to give a conviction, if you will, going through the entire process, and that's not helping the landlord very much at all.
I think this could end up being debated on the floor, but I'm conscious of time, and I can take back to judiciary this notion of how how will we monitor how this is going? I do
Well-
think if like a drug house, people get a lot of specific pictures in their mind, and a lot of those are other breaches of the lease, like noise and things like that.
Correct.
And violence and intimidation and all the things that witness Jean talked about. So I'm conscious of time as
All right.
well. I think there are two things, Keisha, tomorrow when you talk to judiciary. One is the repetition, the pattern, the how many times can this happen before a landlord is actually able to step in, or after the third call, you know, so time repeated.
Yeah. Or is it simply
yes, I think
the notion of unpleasant conduct, of threatening conduct, of noise, of disruption, you know, those kinds of things, which are very difficult to document.
Well,
except
we're
for arrest
asking,
and conviction.
we're
But
asking,
those can be no trespassed. Like
Right.
that, we're giving them more tools to deal with that before or around a drug overdose.
Well, you're not necessarily doing a no trespass to the tenant. You're doing
Right.
it to visitors, right? The point is, how does a landlord get his or her property back, and what is necessary to happen before the landlord can begin to act?
So just jump back in real quick.
Yeah.
The section 4467 outlines what are the reasons that a landlord can terminate a rental agreement, and it provides the time frame notice period that the landlord has to provide to the tenant.
right,
Is this subsection B regarding termination or breach? There is the B1, which is where you can terminate the rental agreement because of the individual tenant is violating material terms of the lease or is not complying with the tenant's obligations under the chapter. And then there is the B2, which says that the landlord can terminate the rental agreement because the tenant is engaging in criminal activity, illegal drug activity, or acts of violence. This would come in with that and say, the landlord cannot terminate because of seeking medical assistance for a drug overdose. The landlord could still terminate the rental agreement for any other authorized reason. So if the individual tenant is violating the terms of the lease, then the landlord could terminate the rental agreement for that. If the individual tenant is doing other acts of violence or other criminal activity, then the landlord could proceed with terminating a rental agreement for those reasons.
Let me give you a suggestion here. As we look at that subparagraph 3, a landlord shall not terminate a rental agreement. Under this subsection, if we insert the word after subsection solely based on. What that does is it allows that to add to the evidence of drug use or other improper behavior in the apartment upon which upon which that information can be used as part of the basis for termination.
One other thing I will point out, two other quick things, just to echo something that Senator Ron Hughes included a second ago. With the changes to the trespass section, a landlord would be able to issue a no trespass order to any other individuals who may have been at the location if they were violating the lease terms or doing illegal drug activity. The landlord could issue no trespass orders to those individuals. The landlord can't no trespass the tenant. The tenant has a legal right, to be there. One other thing I think may be relevant to your discussion is this last condition here under the section, which says that evidence obtained from the good faith request for medical assistance cannot be used in an ejectment action. And I know that has been raised as a concern previously.
Well, let's say a person is operating a drug house and one of his or her customers suffers an overdose. and you want to terminate that person for any of these other reasons, how would you even get his name?
I think the medical, I mean, I think you get the name through the action of saving their life. I mean, I think you would, during the health department would probably have that, certainly the ambulance department. I mean,
But that's not
it's
releasable, is it, to a landlord?
not, it's protected by HIPAA. My guess is, I mean, I'm not fully clear on
So
that.
how would they get it in the first place?
So, but this is
We
language.
know who the tenant, we know who the landlord, the tenant is, because the tenant is the one who's occupying the property.
Okay.
But who other people are who are coming and going and buying drugs or using them and having this particular problem, how would a landlord get that information in the first place to be able to?
So first of all, I think we should get to the other sections of the bill if I'm going to talk to judiciary tomorrow about where we're headed. I will say, I mean, if a landlord has that difficult of a relationship with the tenant where they can't get the information about other people who are coming and going from the apartment, that is a breach of their rental agreement. So this is only
Why is it a breach
focused
of a
on.
rental agreement if a tenant will not give the landlord the names of people who visits him?
That's right. I mean, it's so.
That's what she's saying, I think.
So this section is very narrow, which is why judiciary felt this would keep other public safety matters from coming up, like an overdose death. That is also a public safety issue they take very seriously. So this is saying, saying a tenant won't face the ultimate loss of their right to housing because them or someone else had an overdose. That sole behavior, they wouldn't stop their action of calling an emergency service provider for that reason. I am sure there will be other ways for them to get at breach of rental agreement, but I will say I'm worried because we keep saying drug house, and this could be very quiet people where somebody has a drug overdose and they don't want evidence to be used against them if they call an ambulance for someone having a drug overdose. But they may otherwise be pretty quiet and
right.
Like a lot of people use drugs that can cause them to overdose without being, like a drug house. And that behavior, we just don't want people to die of overdoses. I mean, we've had headlines about people who lived very quiet lives who've died of overdoses. This is just about the overdoses, not about problem tenants.
Exactly. This could be somebody who's recovering, who has just lapsed, as Jean pointed out. I mean, this doesn't need to be such an extreme. And we have the court looking at the dangerous tenant, the dangerous situation, and how can we speed up the eviction process that would both help the tenants who are terrified by what's going on and help the landlord whose apartments are compromised in these situations. So we have the court, the judiciary couldn't land on solving the other problem. So it's been sent to the court study at the moment. But I think we need to move on. Randy, I would appreciate it if you would chat with your colleague in Franklin District, Bob Norris, who did vote for this. I'd appreciate it if you and Bob would connect today.
Conversation with him.
If that would be possible, that would be great.
I will have a conversation with him.
Great, thanks. So I think we're making progress on this. We have struck for A and B. I believe we still have struck those. Is that right, Cam?
No, ma'am. Real quick before we
Oh,
move
we
on.
decided to keep those. We can't terminate a protected, right. We decided to keep those. Sorry.
Yes, ma'am. If you did, quick question before we move on.
Yeah.
Are we all interested in adding this word on line 19 as recommended by Senator Brock?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
All right, Keisha, Tom?
I mean,
It's fine. It's gonna go to committee of conferences. There's
Yeah,
gonna be further
well, if it
discussion.
goes to committee of conference.
I'm
yeah.
not worried for the moment.
But if we could look at the rest of the
Section,
the section, yeah, we have had a request.
Moving to sub 4A and B, this is about bifurcating of the rental agreements. So
Right.
first off, 4A says that a landlord shall not terminate a rental agreement because of an incident or pattern of domestic abuse, sexual assault, or stalking. And then 4B says that a protected tenant may request to bifurcate the rental agreement as authorized in this new section down here.
So this is where we received a request in
I
probably
think
in
it's the
between
next-
for
I
A
think
and
it's
B.
It's the next section. that
No,
we
I'm
got.
talking about, I think I'm talking about something else.
Oh.
We've received a request for between A and B to add that something like they shall not terminate a rental agreement because of behavior related to a tenant's disability.
That's
So-
already covered in law, I believe.
It's, well, I would say it's not, if we're
Well,
looking at,
let's find, Cameron, you looked at that, didn't you? I believe we discussed this the other day.
you're protected for asking for an accommodation.
So-
The law gets much fuzzier if you are talking about something someone can demonstrate was a disturbance of the peace or some such thing related to their disability.
So,
Cameron?
yep, I'm going to try my best to channel what I assume is the discussion or the request here. You can't discriminate against someone because they have a disability. You can't terminate someone's rental agreement because they are disabled. Again, I mentioned earlier, under 4467, you have to have a specific reason for terminating a rental agreement, and having a disability is not one of them. And it would be a violation of, state and federal, protections to discriminate against someone because of their disability. What I assume is the request, so assume bold underline here, you need to speak to the advocates to get an understanding of what they're requesting from you. I assume that the issue that's trying to be addressed is if someone has a disability and because of that disability, they do something, they violate the material terms of the rental agreement, or they may do some sort of act of violence against someone because of their underlying disability, to add in law to say that you cannot terminate the rental agreement because of someone's breach of the material terms of the agreement or someone's acts of violence due to their disability. If someone's disabled and they do a criminal act, you as the landlord can terminate the rental agreement because of the criminal activity. And I think the request is to add something in that says, if that activity or breach is the result of, or the cause, the effect of someone's disability, then you can't terminate them because of that. That, I believe, is a different question. It's not.
Can I
No, but-
clarify, Cameron?
Yeah,
And if we need, I think it's a good clarification question you're asking, Cameron. Because throughout the bill, we're trying to separate violence as a criminal act from other things that are considered criminal, like damages. So if there is a way for us to
also,
separate that
I do
out,
think
it's
there's
pretty
another
similar
request.
with domestic violence, that we're
So-
not excusing the violent act. We're trying to get at other behaviors that might be considered a breach of the rental agreement or criminal, but are not the threat of violence or
That's, I
actual
don't think that's, don't think that's in this section. What I think we're trying to get at with a C here is that you would be protected, and a landlord could not terminate a lease if you asked for an accommodation. I believe that's what's being requested here, not dealing with a dangerous.
One of the requests was to ensure that a landlord could not retaliate against someone for requesting an accommodation. Again, if you want I'm not the attorney that handles discrimination matters for our office, but if you want my immediate reaction, I would say that that's already protected. You can't discriminate against someone because of a disability. So if a landlord is changing terms of a rental agreement due to somebody having requested reasonable accommodations, I think that's a pretty clear-cut, discrimination argument there. However, you all have already requested to remove the entire section related to retaliatory conduct. So I can't add it in if you've already removed that entire section from the bill.
I'm not talking, I think the chair and I are talking about two different things. Because requesting an accommodation is a pretty premeditated activity that we would not want retaliation against, and probably has a lot of other protections. Somebody, for example, damaging a wall with their wheelchair, these are the kinds of things that I'd like to have covered in a section on not terminating a rental agreement.
So I just want to note that we have lost Thomas. Thomas had to leave at 10:50, and we have Terry and Terry Corzone's here and Judge Zone, and we have 6 minutes left to meet. I think sadly, I mean, we have to work through these, but I also am cognizant of who we've asked to be here with us in this limited time. I'm happy to continue. I don't know about Cam or Randy or Keisha.
Cameron, can I work with you on this language, and then the committee can discuss it
we can
whenever we're
look at it. But Terry and Tom, I'm hoping you can weigh in with us, because we do have some language changes in the court study. If we could just chat about that while you're with us, that would be, I think, a good use of our time. And I think we are sadly given our time frame. I am happy to continue for another half hour. I don't know about my committee mates, and I don't know about Terry or Tom, but Randy and Keisha and Cam, could you continue until 11:30 so that we can finish going through the bill and just let Terry and Tom weigh in right now?
I could do 11:15.
Okay. So
I'll stay.
Okay, great. Thanks. Welcome. It's great to have you. We had some thoughts about the housing study, about the court study, and would just appreciate whether what you thought. For us, this is a very focused docket question. A housing court is a much bigger issue, and one that we have wanted to address with Gus Seelig, and as we have talked about all our housing bills for the last 3 years, we have been very interested in exploring a housing, some sort of appeals court, a housing court that deals with issues much bigger than landlord-tenant law. But we see this study as being very, very focused on landlord-tenant and residential rental housing. And so to that end, we had thought to add, would you mind if we changed the name from a housing docket to a residential rental housing docket, something like that, or landlord tenant docket? But we just wanted to make it much more specific in terms of what you're looking at, because otherwise you're looking at you're looking at appeals, you're looking at all the housing issues, zoning, permitting, everything. Terry.
I would have no objection to changing that. And I think it sounds like it's more in keeping with what the intent is for this study in any event.
I will just add that many states call it eviction diversion, just like we have diversion court for drug activity. So I don't know if there's a title you have problems with,
But-
versus ones you don't have problems with, but,
I
The-
think eviction diversion to me, though, there could be problematic because that would, I think, be contrary to a completely neutral view, which the court has to have in terms
Right.
of eviction actions.
It may
Well-
not be a diversion. Diversion is one option. I mean, so I think if we call it something like residential rental housing, or landlord tenant, you have a preference, or Cam, you've thought about this. Does anybody have thoughts? Jean, Chris, jump in if you have a thought. But I think a diversion implies one of the options for solution.
maybe it was always informal, but I was under the impression that diversion was often used when you're trying not to use the harshest penalties of the law in a case, but trying to work through more mediated agreements like diversion for drugs, diversion for other things, that it doesn't mean that person's not in trouble. It means that you're trying to divert it from the, criminal docket.
So I think one of the things we might give you is give the court an opportunity to name whatever the docket would be if they were willing to create such a docket. But for this study, it's really what we're talking about is a study on residential rental work. And I think that you could name it, you could maybe come back to us with a suggested name for that docket after you do the work of thinking through what the docket would entail.
It could be included in the report, maybe, a recommendation.
That's what I mean. Right. There were other concerns about the study, I think, or is the committee okay with the rest, other than referring to it as a housing docket? We should probably refer to it as something else, but are there other concerns other than the name?
Well, I'd like to hear from Judge Sone because it does speak to specific days that it would take. And I think we'd all love to have, be able to say, can you study and come back to us how many days any of this would take? Maybe that's more, I think judiciary left that alone from the House, but I really feel like we've tried to absorb and appreciate that they are a separate branch of government and we can't tell them how many days to take on.
Right. I think what the concern is making it more efficient and speeding.
Obviously, yeah. But I'm going to propose that we take out the number of days, and I would be happy to hear from Judge Sone about that.
Tom Zone, Chief Superior Judge. I think if you look at, there's three sections, A, B, and C on pages 19 through 21.
Right.
Section A is the one that I think Senator Hinsdale is talking about. And I think Terry can jump in and correct me, but I think Terry and I would agree that those are the types of questions that the judiciary can assist with in a report, to look at the information, to talk about the impacts, to talk about the procedures, to talk about the timelines. So we can work on that, I believe.
Okay.
Section B is different on page 20. On line 8 through line 21, it says that the report shall include information on the legal issues to consider. This crosses the line from talking about the types of issues that the court would generally talk about when we comment on bills, and that is, what are the operational, what are the procedural aspects? This asks the court essentially to give legal opinions, advisory opinions, and I don't think it's appropriate for the court to say, well, here's the legal issues we're going to have to consider. The reality is that there will be statutory and constitutional issues that are raised, and those issues will have to be decided by the courts based upon whatever statute the legislature were to enact. And so I think it's that entire section B starts getting into basically asking the court to predict and asking the report to predict how the court would rule on things. And I don't think that courts can do that. Then if you look at subsections.
Is your proposal then to strike little b?
I think that little b would be something that would be struck. I just don't see that as the court. as Terry, as the court administrator, being able to really weigh in on that if we're going to be the ones deciding the issues. And then subsection C on page 21.
So,
talks
sorry,
about-
Tom, just to go back,
Sure.
you would strike little b 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4, all of those?
I think that if you procedural issues with shortening
Those
timeframes,
are all, yeah.
I think that's something that Terry could talk about in a report that the court judiciary could weigh in on. But if you look at question on line 12, 1, how the court could determine, that's a judicial determination. 15, line 15, subsection 2, whether there are procedural issues, that's something the court can touch on. What are there procedural issues that we would see that would impact how the court could go forward? But then we look at line 18, subsection 3, how the court would determine damage. Again, we're back to issues for the court to have to figure out. So I think there's a difference between procedures and I'll say the how would sections.
If I could mention, Senator Hashim had run by subpart A when it was introduced, and we said that's fine, and the timeline, the January 2027 is fine. B was just added, and as Judge Zone said, is completely different in terms of what the study is asked to evaluate. And the part about the 21-day, that's already part of A. That would be encompassed already in A, but in terms of asking for, it almost asks for an advisory opinion, which we wouldn't be able to do ethically.
So it strikes me, but I think that 3 and 4 make sense under A, under big B. Parts of it, this 3 and 4 make some sense for you to weigh in on in terms of a report, making a recommendation. But what I hear you suggesting is striking B, 1, 1 and 3, and that 2 is redundant because it's already encompassed in A.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
And then 4, actually, to be honest, there wouldn't be any procedural issues from the court's perspective regarding shortening the time frame for the termination of a residential rental agreement. That would be a question of fact for the parties to present. It wouldn't have any impact on court scheduling, the termination of the rental agreement time frame. It would be from the number of days before a hearing is held, for example, but that actual shortening of a time frame wouldn't have any impact on the court's processes. That would be regarding cause of action between the landlord and the tenant.
So I think the key, what we're trying to get at is how can we do this more efficiently and in a shorter time frame, but be balanced and fair to both parties. So I think that's the piece that we don't have succinctly pulled together in a sentence or two. Is that correct?
I think if you look at sub C on page 21, it talks about the court administrator having to balance the needs of interested parties and making recommendations, including a balancing of rights, landlord's property interest.
That's the key.
That's the key. That is not a place where the judiciary should weigh in because that's policy. The judiciary determines the legal and factual issues of whatever policy the legislature develops. But subsection C is essentially saying, well, the court administrator, essentially on behalf of the judiciary, should come up with a system that's fair to everybody. That's not the role of the judiciary. That's the role of the legislature to develop that policy. Our role is to move forward in court with whatever policy the legislature develops with that balance that the legislature strikes, not.
I think you're right, Tom. And I think this is what is sadly a task force that would be balanced with all the key stakeholders would be having to do and coming up with a recommendation on that front. And that is what they have not recommended that here, but that is, I think that's what's needed. And the court isn't going, what you're clearly saying to us is the court isn't going to recommend policy to us. You're going to recommend how we can look at procedures that might shorten timeframes and make it more efficient, but you're not, and how we could look at evicting a dangerous, dangerous and threatening and health and safety challenged tenants that disrupt life for everyone else. But you can't weigh in on the policy in C B1, 3 or 4?
If I may, we would be happy to say in developing the report, we would take into consideration the views of these different parties. I think we'd be doing that anyway, but I mean, that's how I see us. We're not taking on a legislative function of balancing interest, but we can certainly take into consideration and inform the report with the, people's different views on whether, a separate dedicated docket would achieve the goals that you're looking for.
Right. So we could turn C into that.
I think take into consideration views of landlords, tenants, and neighbors vis-a-vis the safety concerns.
You could just say, I mean, public safety concerns, you don't need to spell out.
Yeah, true.
I think
Yeah.
the less prescriptive, the better for the court. And Madam Chair, I just say with 7 minutes left, maybe we can have Terry and Cameron work on that exact language and we
I
can
think
do it.
that is the,
Yeah.
once, now that we have landed there, I think Cameron, you've heard clearly what I think the court's concerns are with this section. And I think we need to develop a new C, or maybe have a different letter or number altogether. But Terry, could you and Cameron continue to work on this?
Sure.
That's great.
Madam Chair, and I get what you want regarding C, and I think we can work on some language tweak there. I think that's pretty straightforward. What would you all like to do with subsection B? I appreciate the concerns raised by Judge Zone and the judiciary here regarding the use of the term legal issues on line 8. Are you wanting to change that to procedural issues, or are you wanting to strike the entire subsection? I can share my screen if that would be helpful.
I think the procedural issues addressed in 2 we can get rid of because Terry sees them being encompassed in A. Those times.
So what the Judiciary Committee was trying to get at there are there's the question of in A 2.
Big A.
Yeah, hang on. There's the question here about the number of judges and staff necessary to resolve ejectment actions within 21 days from the date of filing of the complaint. That's a question. It's really, kind of numerical. Tell us the number of staff you need to do that exact thing. The question in B was more of, well, the defendant has 21 days to file an answer after service of the complaint. And we're saying that you have to file the hearing within 21 days after the filing of the complaint. So there are conflicts here within the rules of civil procedure about when these events have to occur. And so what are the issues that you, judiciary, are going to have to resolve through if we were to make the 21-day timeline start from the day of filing of the complaint versus if we start the 21-day time frame from the date of service of the answer. So those are, I see them as 2 entirely separate questions. And if you were to remove 2, then you can answer the question in the sub A without even commenting on this question in the B2.
Mm-hmm. And if I could say, I mean, if it was up to me, I'd take out timelines in both areas and talk to judiciary about it, because I have been talking to the chair of judiciary for a few weeks now about the reality that if there's a real threat of danger, the court has much better procedures for trying to ensure that so like that's when you, in my mind, I would rather the court, we give the court the ability to say, this needs to run in parallel with the relief from abuse or relief from exploitation process. And there might be, I mean, we've seen housing providers get killed in gruesome ways.
Yes.
And I would want the court to be contemplating a public safety threat that is not intimate partner or household member related to dealing expeditedly with the public safety threat, not some number of days. I think that's actually kind of a less important consideration.
It's the
I think the number of days came from some number of days that is gone now in the bill.
Oh, it's not gone. This is the original language, I think. Is that right, Cameron, from the House?
Well, the House came over
Study.
with a requirement to have certain expedited hearings within 21 days, and the Judiciary Committee removed the statutory requirement to hold those hearings as they removed all of the changes to the ejectment court process, but they wanted to keep within the, report to come back to you of what resources would be necessary to have those expedited hearings within 21 days, which is as it was proposed by the House.
Right.
Cameron, I wonder if you could put the statutory language we're talking about, the bill that we're talking about on the screen. While we're talking.
Yeah, are you wanting to look at the ejectment language that the Judiciary Committee struck out?
Yeah, well, whatever we're talking about various pieces of the bill, it would be helpful to have them on screen so we could see them at the same time.
Okay, my apologies, sir. Yeah, this is what we're referring to. This is the section on page 19 regarding the statewide housing court report. And Senator Ron Hinsdale was speaking about these timelines that are built into the assumptions that the judiciary would need to have in developing the report. So, the report had to include the number of judges and staff necessary to resolve all ejectments within 90 days following the date of filing of the complaints, and then subsequently to resolve ejectment actions due to the termination of a rental agreement under 4467B2. So those are the terminations due to criminal activity, illegal drug activity, or acts of violence, and to resolve those actions within 21 days. And that 21-day time frame comes from the bill as it came over from the House, because the House had built in new statutory language that would require there to be a hearing within 21 days from the date of filing of the complaint.
Mhm.
And this is the ability to eject more rapidly with the most dangerous.
Right, but so I have to go because it's 11:15 and you're going to lose a quorum. I don't support putting in a number of days because I think that's a false way to look at danger. If someone is dangerous, then you want a process that may put a temporary order in place or allows you to eject them right away. You're not 21 days is enough time for someone to get seriously hurt. And so
it may be too long. Exactly. So I think.
So I'm not for days. So then I have to go.
Okay. I would ask that Terry, if you are that. I think this is not ready. This is a classic example. It would be great if our committees could meet together and actually resolve this together. But in the meantime, given we don't have that ability today, Terry and Cameron, could we work on this? And I'm happy to help. I mean, how can we move this forward now, given our incredible time crunch that we're facing this week?
At a minimum, what I'm hearing, Madam Chair, is, and Terry, please correct me if I'm wrong, but you were, okay with the sub A. I feel like you mentioned that briefly a moment ago. I can work with you on tweaking the subsection C to address the concerns that were just raised about, the judiciary's role in this. And then, Madam Chair, if you would like, I can just have a conversation with Terry and Judge Zonay about their concerns with sub B. I recognize them.
I hear their concerns. I think what we're looking for, just to finish on what, sorry, I was just on A with the days. I think what we're concerned in following up with the issues in Little Romanet 3. The concerns are making it faster and more efficient. How could the court make it faster and more efficient to deal with the challenges that are identified in Romanet 3. Is that correct?
I think that's correct. And I think the issue that I, as your legislative council drafter, and the issue that I don't mean to speak for them, but the judiciary is going to come in and say is that's a policy decision. How many days you think it takes or should take for a particular ejectment action to have a hearing is a strictly policy decision that you as the legislature get to make. And what the report is saying for the judiciary to say, okay, judiciary, if you're going to have these hearings within 21 days, because that's the policy we as the legislature want to make, then tell us the number of judges and the staff necessary to accomplish that. And if you strike this 21 days out, then I think you're making it difficult to get a report that's actually going to give you the information you want, because Terry and Judge Donek, please forgive me, correct me if you feel differently, but the judiciary is going to come back and say the number of judges and staff necessary to do what? If you strike the timeframes from this report, I think, I would say, everybody, more staff to accomplish what policy goal that you would like as the legislative branch. I hope that's helpful.
I agree with that description. Judge Zone?
That works for me. And I apologize. I do have to sign off at this time.
Yeah. So,
Thank you.
Cameron and Terry, do you want to take a stab at this?
Sure.
Is that
Cameron, you can let me know your availability and I can walk over.
Yes, ma'am.
That would be great. Happy to be looped in if you need me. But we're going to need a recommendation in the next day or so, as you know. I mean, I apologize, but we were supposed to have all our bills out on Friday, and we're just overwhelmed with bills in our committee. It's a huge jurisdiction, as you know.
Yeah.
So, and we haven't even gotten the cannabis bill yet. So, I mean, we have housing and data privacy, and we've got like a gazillion things, and they're all big. Like, this is big. That's why I had recommended at the beginning of our meeting that we really just focus on this, but the study is not in as good a shape as I had thought it was. And we're not ready to vote on this today, obviously, at all. So I would thank you for your work on this. I'm happy to be looped in later in the afternoon. And Kara and I will try and figure out how we move this forward. Kara, if you could stay on, I think unless anybody has anything else to add at the moment, we still haven't finished going through the bill, but I think we've got a good sense. I think, Cam, you've got a good sense for where we pick up at the next time. And then,
Yes, ma'am.
and Cameron, I'm very grateful to you for helping move this forward at this moment.
I will
Have a great day.
I will have an amendment.
Thank you, Judge. Cameron, I'll wait to hear back from you. You've got my cell phone. What time's good for you? And I'll come over.
Okay.
Right. Okay, Terry, everybody, thank you so much. Randy, thank you. Randy, we'll figure out tomorrow.